She slammed her fist on my cabin door so hard it rattled the windows. "Pack your things and get out. This property belongs to the Lakeshore HOA now," she barked. I stood on the porch, coffee still in my hand, watching her wave a bright orange eviction notice like she owned the mountain. My cabin sat quietly by the lake, mist floating over the water, but her voice cut through the calm like a siren. "Ma'am," I said slowly, "this land has been in my family for generations. You don't have the right to—" She cut me off, stepping closer, eyes burning. "I am the authority here. You're trespassing on community property." Before I could answer, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "Yes, send officers right now. He's refusing to leave, and he's armed." I froze. Armed? My tools were on the porch, but no gun. She knew exactly what she was doing. Within minutes, I heard sirens echoing through the pines. My heart beat steady, not because I was scared, but because I knew something she didn't. 2 police cars rolled up, lights flashing. The officers stepped out, hands near their holsters. "Sir, step away from the cabin," one of them ordered. Karen smirked like she had already won. "Arrest him. He's dangerous and squatting." I raised my hand slightly. "Officers, before you do anything, check the county land records under my name." Karen laughed, loud and sharp. "Oh, please, you think a piece of paper will save you?" The older officer hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he looked at me. He knew my name. His hand dropped from his holster. Karen's smile faded for a second. I didn't move, just watched. "You sure you want to do this?" I asked her quietly. She scoffed. "You don't own a single inch of this place." I opened the worn leather folder I kept by the door. Deeds, maps, not just for the cabin, for the land and beyond. Karen stepped back, confusion crawling across her face. The officer took the papers, his eyes widening as he flipped through them. He whispered to his partner, stunned. Karen's voice cracked. What is that?" I looked at her, calm as the lake behind me. "You're trying to evict me from land I never left, because this isn't HOA property." I stepped closer, voice low but clear. "This whole lake, these woods, the roads leading here, they belong to me." Karen's face drained of color. The officer shut the folder gently. "Ma'am, I think you just made a big mistake." And that was the moment she realized. She hadn't just picked a fight with a cabin owner. She'd challenged the man who owned the entire county. "You should have checked who you were messing with before calling the cops to my land." Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. She stepped back like the porch itself had turned to fire beneath her heels. The officers didn't leave, but their stance changed. No more hands on weapons, just quiet glances between each other and at the documents. One of them spoke into his radio, low voice, asking dispatch to confirm the land ownership. Karen snapped out of her shock and hissed, "No, don't listen to him. He forged it. He's lying." But her voice didn't sound powerful anymore. It sounded desperate. I didn't respond to her. Instead, I walked slowly to the edge of the porch and looked out at the lake. The water rippled under the morning sun. I could feel Karen's stare burning into my back. Then her voice came again, colder, quieter. "Fine. If the cops won't remove you, I'll make sure the HOA board does. We're taking this land one way or another." She turned sharply and marched to her car like she still controlled the story. The officer stayed, waiting for the radio response. The older one cleared his throat. "Sir, just to be clear, how much land are we talking about?" I met his eyes. From the lake to the western ridge and to the county line. His eyebrows jumped. Karen froze mid-step, her hand on the door handle of her SUV. "That's not possible," she whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The radio crackled. "Dispatch to Unit 3. Records confirmed. Property under the name of—" The officer glanced at me, then finished quietly. "Belongs to him, including the lake." Silence followed, thick and heavy. Karen's hand trembled on the door. She tried one last time, voice shaking but sharp. This isn't over. You can't just own everything. The HOA will shut this place down. I'll make sure of it." She drove off, tires spitting gravel. The officers apologized for the trouble, but I waved it off. "You were just doing your job." Before they left, the older one pulled me aside. His voice dropped. "She's not going to let this go. You know that, right?" I nodded. "I'm ready." He hesitated, then asked, "Why didn't you say anything sooner about owning all this?" I looked out at the lake again. Some things are easier when people don't know. As their cars disappeared down the dirt road, the quiet returned. But it wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt like the air was holding its breath. I went inside the cabin, locked the door, and placed the old leather folder back in the drawer where it always stayed, next to something else no one knew about. Because Karen thought I was just some quiet man with a cabin. She had no idea I wasn't just defending my home. I was protecting a secret buried deep in this land, something worth more than the county itself. And she was coming back. I could feel it. The next morning, before the sun even touched the lake, I heard engines, more than one. I stepped onto the porch, and sure enough, 3 black SUVs and a golf cart with the HOA logo rolled up the dirt path like they owned it. Karen stepped out first, sunglasses on, lips tight. Behind her stood 2 men in suits and a woman holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. She didn't bother with a greeting. "This is your final warning. The HOA has voted. You are in violation of community regulations. No unauthorized buildings are allowed near the lake." She pointed at my cabin. "Either leave now or we will initiate legal action and seize the property." I didn't say a word. I just stared at her until the silence made even her uncomfortable. The man in a gray suit spoke next, more polite but not kinder. "We reviewed your claim of ownership. Impressive paperwork, but the HOA has authority over residential behavior and land use within these borders. You can keep the land, but not the structures." He looked at my cabin. "This must go." Karen smirked, like victory was already in her hands. Inside my chest, I felt something cold and steady. "You think I'm living on your land?" I said quietly, "but actually, you're living on mine." Karen laughed too loudly. "You don't control us. This is a governed community." I walked back inside the cabin for a second, and when I returned, I was holding a different document, thick, sealed, old. I placed it on the porch rail. "This isn't just a deed. It's a charter, signed by the state over 100 years ago. My family was granted not just ownership, but jurisdiction." The woman with the clipboard stepped forward, doubt in her eyes. She reached for it, then hesitated. Karen snatched it instead, flipped it open, and her face went pale. The charter clearly named my great-grandfather as the founding landholder and granted full control of land use, water access, and township authority long before any HOA existed. "This is fake," she muttered, though her voice was softer now. I leaned against the doorway. "Check with the county archives or the state property office. They've got copies." The man in the gray suit swallowed. He knew it. He believed it. Karen crumpled the corner of the page in frustration. "You think this scares me? HOA rules still apply. We'll fine you for every day this cabin stands." Her voice shook, but she kept talking. "And if you don't pay, we'll take you to court." I stepped closer, my eyes fixed on hers. "Then I'll see you there. But don't be surprised when the judge asks why the HOA is trying to control land that legally doesn't exist on their maps." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Karen snapped. "Boys," she said to the 2 hired workers behind her, "start marking the property for demolition." They hesitated. She barked louder. They moved toward my cabin with red stakes and tape. That was when I said, calm but clear, "Touch my cabin, and I'll show everyone what's buried under this land." They stopped. Karen froze. "What are you talking about?" she asked. I looked out at the lake, then back at her. Something your HOA doesn't want anyone to know. Something they thought was gone. Her hand lowered slowly. Fear, real fear, flashed across her eyes. Because now she understood. This wasn't just a fight over land. It was about secrets older than the HOA, older than her rules. And I wasn't backing down. They called a town meeting that night at the community hall. Karen's move to turn the neighbors against me. I watched from the back as she paced the stage, voice loud and sharp, painting me as a dangerous squatter who threatened property values. "He's unstable," she told the room. "He says he owns the lake. What if he blocks our access? What if he sues everyone?" People who had smiled at her at the clubhouse nodded, whispering and looking at me like I'd brought a storm. I stood up when it was my turn. The hall went quiet. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I put the charcoal map and the old charter on the table and let them see. I showed faded photographs, black and white aerial shots, where the lines were different, where the roads led to my family's homestead long before any HOA gate ever existed. "This county was drawn up with my name on it," I said. "Not by me, but by the people who came before me. They gave my family authority here." A woman in the second row mouthed, "My grandmother said something like that." And a man near her stood straighter. Karen's face tightened. She leaned into the microphone and tried to drown me out with legal jargon and threats, but people had seen the papers. Murmurs turned to questions. "So the HOA can't just erase history?" someone asked. "Do we even own our own lots?" another whispered. The room shifted. Certainty became doubt. Then Karen did what she did best. She weaponized panic. She pulled out her phone, voice shaking with practiced fury, and said she would call 911 because she felt threatened. A few people gasped. The chairwoman looked torn. I stayed calm. I knew the officers who would come. I also knew gaslighting in crowds could be dangerous. So I did two things at once. I asked for a pause, and I slid an envelope across the table to an old friend in the crowd, Tom Ruiz, who ran county records for years before he retired. Tom opened it with hands that didn't shake. Inside were copies of more records, the kind only someone who used to work in the archives could read. Ledger stamps, notarized seals, a chain of title that ran straight from territorial days to my name. He glanced up, eyes wet and steady, and said, loud enough for the hall, "These are real. I remember filing these." That line shifted the mood faster than any speech. Karen's volunteers fanned out, whispering into phones. Her smile thinned. By the time the squad car arrived, the meeting had become a messy live argument. Karen pointed at me and told the officer I was threatening the town and refusing to leave. The deputy, a young man new to the county, looked unsure. Tom stepped forward, pointed to the charters, and explained the old jurisdiction rules. The deputy radioed the sheriff. This time, the call didn't end with cuffs. It ended with a request for verification. Karen left the hall in a fury, but before she slammed the door, she turned and said, "You think this proves everything? Wait till our lawyer tears this up in court." Her voice carried into the parking lot like a dare. People filed out, talking in low voices, some shaking their heads, others glancing at me with pity or suspicion. I felt the weight of their eyes, but also a strange lightness. Things were no longer a secret. When I walked back to my cabin that night, a drone hummed over the tree line and then landed softly by the dock. It was small, black, with tape on its legs. I picked it up and saw a microchip glued inside the casing, old, custom stuff. My thumb brushed a stamped number I hadn't seen in years. I smiled without meaning to. The drone belonged to me. I'd used it years back to map the shoreline for my own records. I hadn't told a soul that I still had the backup drives, hidden under a loose floorboard in the boathouse, full of video and audio recordings from decades ago. Recordings that proved more than ownership. Recordings that would show how certain people had quietly changed maps, sold access, and even threatened families to keep the secret. I didn't tell anyone that tonight. I set the drone on the workbench, opened a beer, and listened to the lake. The real fight was only beginning. Karen had just lit the match, and she had no idea how dry the forest already was. People can lie to the room, I thought, but they can't lie to the proof. The next morning, fog sat low over the water, and for a few peaceful minutes, I thought maybe things would quiet down. Then I heard tires crunching on gravel, again. This time, it wasn't just Karen. A full-size moving truck, 3 pickup trucks, and a group of men wearing bright vests with HOA enforcement written on them pulled up in front of my cabin. Karen got out last, heels clicking on the dirt like she wanted the whole forest to hear her. Her smile was calm, too calm. That was worse than her yelling. "You didn't show up to the emergency board hearing this morning," she said, "so we voted. Your cabin is officially condemned. We're removing it today." She motioned to the workers. "Take it down." The men hesitated. One of them whispered, "Ma'am, we don't have a sheriff's order." Karen stepped closer to him, voice sharp as broken glass. "You have an HOA order. That's higher than some old piece of paper." I walked down the steps slowly. "You're making a mistake," I said. She crossed her arms. "No, you made the mistake of thinking you're above the rules." Then she waved her hand. The workers started pulling equipment from the trucks. Electric saws, chains, hammers. Karen didn't even look at me. But before they took a single step toward the cabin, I clicked a button on my phone. A loud beep echoed from the boathouse near the lake. A metal door inside slid open, and I watched Karen's fake confidence start to crack. From inside the boathouse, I carried out an old weatherproof case. I placed it gently on the porch railing. "Before you touch a single board on this house," I said, "you should see what your HOA has been hiding for years." Karen rolled her eyes. "What now? Treasure maps?" I opened the case. Inside were 3 hard drives sealed in plastic. Drone footage, audio files, water surveys, property violations done by the HOA themselves. I looked straight into her eyes. This land wasn't just stolen, Karen. People were paid to look away. Maps were changed. Families were forced out. One of the workers paused, staring at me. Another stepped back entirely. Karen's voice dropped lower. "You're bluffing." I pulled out a small tablet and tapped the screen. A video began playing, grainy footage of 2 men from the HOA board meeting with a county surveyor at night near the lake dam. Their voices were clear. "Just move the marker. No one will notice. Their family doesn't come here anymore." Karen's face went white. She lunged forward and slapped the tablet out of my hand. It hit the porch, screen cracked, but still playing the audio. Everyone heard it. "You're manipulating old files! This is illegal!" she screamed, but her voice broke halfway. I bent down, picked up the tablet, and turned the volume up. "This is only one clip," I said quietly. "There are hundreds, and I already sent copies to a lawyer in town, plus 2 news stations." Silence. Even the birds stopped. Karen's hand shook as she pointed at me. "I will destroy you. I will—" But she was interrupted by a new sound. Sirens. Real ones. The sheriff's SUV and 2 police cruisers rolled into the clearing. Not rushing, steady, controlled. The sheriff stepped out, hat in hand, his eyes on Karen. "Ma'am, we received evidence of property tampering, false reports, and harassment," he said firmly. "We need to ask you a few questions." Karen stared at him like she couldn't understand the words. "You're arresting me? He's the one. He's stealing this land." The sheriff looked at me, then back to her. "He's not stealing it," he said. As he spoke, one of the officers walked to the workers and said, "Put the tools down. This is a crime scene now." I didn't smile. I just stepped back and let the law take over. But inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control shifting back to where it belonged. And just when Karen thought it couldn't get worse, she noticed the news van rolling down the dirt road. This fight was no longer just between me and her. The whole world was about to see who she really was. Karen froze when she saw the news van. Her face went from shock to pure fury in seconds. She tried to straighten her jacket, tried to look composed, but her hands were still trembling. A reporter stepped out, mic in hand, camera already recording. Ma'am, is it true you tried to evict a lawful property owner with fake HOA authority? The reporter asked. Karen forced a smile, one that cracked at the corners. No, this is a misunderstanding. This man is dangerous. He forged documents and threatened our community. But before she could finish, the sheriff raised his hand. Enough. You've made false reports twice, and now we have evidence of HOA involvement in altering county boundaries. Karen's eyes darted around, looking for support, but the people who came with her wouldn't even meet her eyes. The camera stayed on her, catching every second of her downfall. I stayed quiet, standing near the porch, arms crossed. I didn't need to say anything. The truth was speaking louder than I ever could. The sheriff asked Karen to come with him, just for questioning, he said. But the handcuffs on his belt made it clear this wasn't a polite invitation. Karen stepped back. "You can't arrest me. I am the board president," she snapped. The sheriff took a step forward. Not anymore. That was when she tried to run. She spun around and bolted toward her SUV, gravel flying behind her heels. But one of the deputies was faster. He caught her by the arm, calm and firm. The camera captured everything. Her screaming, "Let go of me! He's lying! This is my neighborhood!" Her voice didn't sound powerful anymore. It sounded scared. People from nearby houses had gathered along the road, watching from a distance. Some whispered, some filmed with their phones. Others just stared, like they were seeing a completely different person than the one who'd ruled over them with HOA letters and fines. As Karen was escorted to the sheriff's vehicle, she turned her head and glared at me. "This isn't over," she hissed. I finally spoke. "It is for you." She was placed in the back seat, door shut, her voice muffled behind glass. The reporter then walked toward me. "Sir, is it true you own not just this cabin, but the entire lake property?" I glanced at the sheriff, who nodded. I looked at the camera. "My family's name is on this land. All of it," I said. "They tried to take it with lies and paperwork, but land remembers the truth, even when people forget." One line from that interview went viral within hours. You don't get to call the cops on someone for standing on their own land. The news vans left. The deputies removed the red demolition markers Karen's workers had placed around the cabin. The sheriff placed a temporary restraining order against her and the HOA board until further investigation. The workers packed up quietly, disbelief on their faces. But as the sun set behind the lake, the sheriff stayed behind. He walked up to me, hands in his pockets. "You did good today, but she's not your only problem," he said. I raised a brow. He lowered his voice. "Karen's name isn't the only one on those files of yours. There are people in town, bigger than her, who have a lot to lose if the truth comes out." I nodded slowly. "I know." He looked out at the shimmering water. "You sure you're ready for what comes next?" I glanced at the boathouse, where the rest of the footage, maps, and records were hidden. "I didn't start this," I said quietly, "but I'll finish it." For the first time in days, the lake was calm. But it wasn't over. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about the county, the secrets under the land, and the people willing to do anything to keep them buried. That night, the air felt heavier than usual, like the lake was holding its breath again. I didn't sleep. I sat at the table in the cabin, the old charter unfolded in front of me, the hard drive stacked beside it. Outside, the moonlight touched the surface of the water, calm and silent. Too calm. Around midnight, I saw headlights in the distance. Not police, not news. 3 vehicles, no logos, no license plates. They parked far from the cabin, near the tree line, engines off. I stood at the window and watched. 4 men stepped out, dressed in dark clothes, no HOA badges, no fancy suits. These weren't Karen's people. These were the kind of men sent when someone wanted things handled quietly. They moved with purpose, checking the area, whispering into earpieces. Someone powerful had just entered the story. One of them approached the cabin slowly, hands visible, like he didn't want trouble. He stopped a few feet from the porch and spoke. "We're here on behalf of certain concerned parties," he said. His voice was calm, professional. They want to make you an offer. You walk away, you sign over usage rights to the lake and surrounding land. In return, you get $10 million. Cash, no more problems. I stared at him, silent. Behind him, one of the others opened the back of a truck. Inside were black cases. Money, real, stacked high. The man gave a small smile. This land has value you don't understand. Don't make this difficult. Take the money, leave. I stepped out onto the porch. This land has value you don't understand either, I said quietly. This isn't about money. His smile faded. He nodded once. Then I'm afraid the offer changes. He signaled with 2 fingers. The men from the trucks began spreading out, toward the boathouse, the shed, even toward the dock. One of them held a gas can, another held bolt cutters. They weren't here to talk anymore. I didn't move. I just said, before you do that, you should know something. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small device, a satellite uploader, custom-made years ago. Its screen was blinking. If anything happens to me or this property, every file, every video, every map goes live. State officials, federal agencies, newspapers, all at once. The man's jaw tightened. He believed me. I could see it in his eyes. You're bluffing, he tried, but his voice wasn't steady now. I pressed a button. The device beeped. Try me. They froze. Even from where I stood, I saw nerves crack through their tough faces. One of them cursed under his breath. The leader lowered his voice. Do you know who you're messing with? He asked. I stared right back. Do they know who they're messing with? For a long few seconds, no one moved. Then the man sighed, motioned to his team. We're done here. They picked up their gear, closed the truck, and drove back into the darkness. As their lights faded, I finally let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I went to the dock, sat down with my boots dangling over the water. The night was quiet again, but not peaceful. Because now, I knew this went deeper than Karen, deeper than the HOA. This was about power, land, control, and I was standing right in the center of it. In the reflection of the lake, I saw the cabin lights glowing behind me. My home, my land, my fight. And tomorrow, the whole county would learn the truth. The sun rose slow and red the next morning, like it already knew today wouldn't be peaceful. I had barely slept, but I didn't feel tired. I felt ready. I brought the drives, the charter, and the drone footage into the back of my truck and drove into town. Word had spread fast. People stood outside their homes, whispering, watching me pass like they were seeing a ghost carrying history on his shoulders. By the time I reached the courthouse, reporters were already waiting. The sheriff met me on the steps. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. I nodded. It's time. Everyone knows. He pushed open the doors. Inside, the room was full. Town residents, county officials, even a few HOA board members who looked like they hadn't slept either. And there, sitting quietly with a fresh lawyer beside her, was Karen. She wasn't shouting this time. She just stared at me. Anger, fear, and something like regret buried deep under it. The judge entered, and the room went silent. The sheriff laid the documents and evidence on the table. Property deeds, audio clips, maps from the original land survey, footage of HOA members altering boundary markers. The courtroom projector lit up, and video played across the wall. Voices echoed. Just shifted a few feet. The old owner's gone. No one will trace it back to us, not if we get the HOA involved. Gasps filled the room. Karen buried her face in her hands. The judge looked stunned, but stayed composed. "Is this authentic?" he asked. Tom Ruiz, the retired records officer, stood. "Yes, Your Honor, I saw these files decades ago, before they disappeared." Then it happened, quiet but powerful. People in the room started to speak up. A woman stood and said her grandparents lost land near the lake after a mysterious inspection. An older man said he was fined by the HOA until he had to sell his home. Every voice added weight. Every story pointed in the same direction. Corruption, hidden under rules and signatures. Karen's lawyer whispered something to her, but it was too late. The judge leaned forward. Based on the evidence, I am issuing an immediate suspension of the HOA's authority over this land until a full federal investigation is conducted. Additionally, subpoenas will be sent to board members and county officials involved. Karen looked up, tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from losing control. She whispered, "You ruined everything." I shook my head slowly. "No, Karen, you did, when you forgot this land wasn't yours to control." Outside the courthouse, cameras and people crowded around me. Someone asked, "So what happens now?" I looked out toward the road that led back to the lake. "Now," I said, "we rebuild what was stolen, and no one will be scared to live on their own land again." That line spread everywhere within hours. You don't fear the land you own, you fear the people trying to take it. By evening, Karen was officially charged with filing false reports and trespassing. Other board members were questioned. The county opened its archives for public view for the first time in years. My phone buzzed with calls from lawyers, news stations, even state officials. But I ignored most of them. Instead, I went back to the lake. The sky was quiet, the water still. I stood on the porch of my cabin, hands in my pockets, breathing in the freedom that had always been mine, but now everyone knew it too. A soft breeze moved through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, I heard an eagle cry over the ridge, and I thought of my family, of the ones who fought for this land long before me. "I didn't fight for this country," I whispered to the lake, just to be told I can't stand on my own ground. The land stayed silent, but it felt like it was listening.